Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic Podcast's game preview. I am your host, Kevin Knight, with my co-host, Alan Strk, with the proper Twitter handle on his nameplate now, just at Alan Strk. The underscore has officially gone. Alan, how are you doing today?
Very well. Eagerly anticipating this matchup. I know it's not ideal going against the Super Bowl champions, well rested as well, angry, but they look vulnerable. And say what you want about the Saints game, there was a lot of encouraging takeaways from that. So I think the doom and gloom outlook I don't think it's right. I think there's a lot to look forward to in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that for the first three quarters, the Falcons were a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the fourth quarter went very stereotypically for this team. But you guys have heard us talk about that. This is where we officially transition to the new
Yes.
week. So there's no, it's all positivity from here on out. But the Falcons did play a much better game than I think most expected. I believe DVOA has them 10th or something like that overall, which, considering they were 32nd last year, basically all year. That's a pretty good
That is
start.
hilarious.
That's
Yeah.
a pretty good
A
start.
7-win team was 32nd DVOA.
Yep.
What a weird year.
Yeah, very eventful season for the Falcons, certainly. Um, yeah, well, let's get right to it. We'll start with the injury report. The Falcons, once again, have a pretty quiet injury report this week. I believe it's just Damian Williams that there's concern potentially about. I think he's been limited both Wednesday and Thursday. But I think that the Falcons are otherwise pretty clean in that regard, which we gotta enjoy that for as long as we can, because you never know when the injury bug will strike. The Falcons got it a bit in camp with the defensive line injuries, and that certainly played a part in their struggle to close out against the Saints last week. But so far so good there. Do you have any concern for Williams' status? I think he did actually come back into the game on Sunday for a few plays, but
I did wonder how much it'll affect Tyler Algier if he's gonna make his debut. It was a little disappointing not to see him out there, but I understood Arthur Smith's reasoning behind it. Just disappointing. How are they going to utilize these running backs? Because Avery Williams, I don't know if he's this year's Felipe Franks, but they seem to want to do some interesting things with him, whether it's putting him in motion, maybe run a jet sweep, who knows? But it seems like they got some sort of plan as like a gadget type player for Avery Williams. But I do hope Algier, regardless, gets on the field. But yeah, we should definitely be grateful for the fact that Falcons are in relatively good shape. I know a few players have to come off IR, most notably Isaiah Oliver, but when the time comes, the time will come and the Falcons will benefit from that because I do think nickel corner is a bit of a concern at the moment.
yeah. Then and we'll get to that because the Falcons actually rotated a lot of guys at nickel corner throughout the game, so that'll definitely be something we cover. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that we will probably see Algier activated going forward. I do think against the Saints, the game plan went a lot more run heavy than they were expecting it to go. That was probably like literally their best case scenario. Like, we're going to put up 200 rushing yards on the Saints. Like, I don't think a team has done that in recent memory. They hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher in like 20 games prior to this. So, I think the Falcons were probably expecting to have to throw more. So they activated another receiver, with Jared Bernhardt. But yeah, definitely a bit of a surprise that they ended up with over 30 carries in this one. Yeah, Avery Williams, I couldn't say it. The team actually asked me not to talk about it too much, but they were deploying him a lot as a slot receiver in camp. So that was one of the wrinkles that I wasn't at liberty to share, but that's part of the reason I was so confident he was going to make the team. And it's like they have a plan for this guy. Like, they're going to use him all over. And honestly, when he did have to carry the ball, like he got like 4 or 5 yards. So, I mean, it wasn't bad either. But
So when you saw him motioning, you're just like, oh, I kind of expected this.
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, no, I knew this was going to happen. Yeah, I tweeted
See,
out once about it, and they were like, could you please not tweet about that again? I was like, yeah.
see,
Yeah.
you have one of 7 reporters, so
Yep.
knew this information.
Yep. So, yeah, they really like him. I think he's looked very good as a receiver. Obviously, after the catch, dangerous. So, good news there. The Rams, unfortunately, not as healthy going into this game. Center Brian Allen was a D. We don't have the Rams Thursday practice report yet. I'll keep updating their ESPN beat writers feed to see if we get anything else. But their DNPs were center Brian Allen, who I believe left last week's game and had to be replaced. Van Jefferson, the wide receiver who was out for week 1. Left tackle Joe Noteboom, who is their starting left tackle after they they didn't let him walk. Andrew Whitworth retired. And then the other ones is actually long snapper Matt Orzek. So you never want to see your long snapper missing time. And then outside linebacker Leonard Floyd was limited. So definitely a lot more big names on the Rams list than the Falcons.
Yeah, Rams took their beatings against the Bills, most notably the offensive line, Joe Newcomb on the receiving end of several Von Miller. I don't know what word we want to use, beatings, lashings, but man, it was a rough start for him considering he did play well during that playoff run. And I'm sure you watch the tape, it's like, okay, teams are going to be targeting him now going forward.
Yeah, I think that's not what they were hoping for. I mean, Noteboom had been their swing tackle for a long time, like you said. Mm-hmm. Actually had to play quite a bit last year, looked really good. I think they were very confident in him being able to step in and replace Andrew Whitworth. They also didn't necessarily have a lot of assets to work with in terms of the draft or free agency because of their team and the way they constructed things. Yeah, so they really were depending on him. The depth, of course, for the Rams has always been a concern as a result of them being sort of a star power, top heavy roster. And they're going to be tested early in this one because, like we just said, Brian Allen, the center, could very well miss this one. And then Noteboom was a DNP on Wednesday. We'll see if that continues over the rest of the week. I would probably still expect him to play, but going down another tackle would be disastrous. So that offensive line definitely looks like a weak spot. I mean, they did play the Bills, who probably are the best defense in the NFL. But the Falcons, that's not necessarily slouches either in the pass rushing department now, getting 4 sacks. 4 sacks.
I just want to mention, obviously it's a family-friendly show, so I'll keep the language clean. But I wonder if there's a Rams podcast out there that is titled "F them picks." Like, if you're a Rams podcast out there, like, you gotta use that slogan to your advantage. So I don't think SB Nation would approve of it, but if you're a team podcast out there, you're covering the Rams, and you gotta use that title somehow.
Yeah.
And if you want to try to make it with a big network, bleep the 3 letters.
Yeah. No, I enjoy that slogan. And look, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you got to go all in, and they certainly have gone all in, and they've seen the payoff from that. I mean, and Falcons fans, if we were told, oh yeah, you get to blow up all of your draft picks and your salary cap, but you'll win a Super Bowl. I mean, I think Falcons fans would take that without question. So
let's not forget about Les Snead, where he came from.
Yep. The one that got away, Les Snead. So. Would it have worked in Atlanta? Who knows? But we'll see there. But yeah, moving into the actual game itself here. The Falcons, what did we start with? Did we start the Falcons offense versus the opponent defense last week? I think we did.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that again. So the Falcons on offense last week had a pretty good game, especially on the ground. The biggest concern we had going in was the offensive line. The offensive line actually performed very well. The Falcons allowed just 1 quarterback hit, I believe just 2 total pressures on Marcus Mariota, and paved the way for one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL in week 1, which is shocking that it's the Falcons, first of all, but doubly shocking because the New Orleans Saints last year were the NFL's #1 rush defense in yards per carry, allowing like 3.5 per carry. Falcons put up over 5 yards per carry against New Orleans. So what are your thoughts on the Falcons' offense's ability to run the ball against the Rams? Do you think it will be as big of a part of the game plan as it was against New Orleans?
I think what was most significant about the performance is that there weren't any 40-yard runs. It was all consistent yardage, 6-yard runs, 8-yard runs. I know Mariota, you could say, all right, because he ran for 72 yards, maybe it's a little bit inflated, but it wasn't because you see sometimes the stat totals can be inflated if there's a 60-yard run, but then mostly 2-3-yard runs. No, this was really sustainable yardage. So that's what really impressed me. And Cordell Patterson just running with sheer violence. There were 2 or 3 runs where Tyrann Mathieu, who's no slouch, he's getting a little older, but he went flying. They just the amount of, we know Cordell Patterson could run through contact. I think he averaged a little over 3 yards per carry after contact last year. I remember that stat from PFF pretty vividly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, he just brings such a physical element,
Yeah.
and I know we're gonna have to we're gonna have to see how they monitor the carries later in the year. But I think this is the type of game where Cordell Patterson needs to get at least 20 touches. Not saying carries necessarily,
Yeah.
although that
Yeah.
would be helpful because I think if he gets 20 carries, that means the Falcons are in position to win. But I just think the game plan has to. He needs to be the focal point, just because he is such a difference maker with the ball in his hands. And I do think this Rams defense is a bit light up front.
Yeah.
Uh, Bobby Wagner seems to be aging. They don't have much on the edge. The linebacker play has always been a question mark with them, even before they got Bobby Wagner. So I want to see them try to replicate this. If they could do it against the Saints, why can't they do it with the Rams? It's just a matter of kind of maintain the pace of the game where it's just like, all right, I'm not saying they have to control the clock and play, have the ball for 35 minutes, but at least be within striking distance because I think that's the best way the Falcons are going to win. Because someone saw last week, if they get in third and long situations, it could get rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The Rams. Let's see. They after week one, surprisingly, they are 19th in rushing yardage allowed. They only allowed 121 yards against the Bills, despite the Bills sort of running away with things at the end. However, they did allow, let's see, 4.8 yards per carry, which is tied for 20th. So that's definitely higher. The Falcons, interestingly, the worst in the league with 7.9 yards per carry allowed, but we all know that's because of like 3 or 4 Taysom Hill runs. They actually, yeah, they actually kept Kamara in check pretty much the whole game, which was, fortunately the more important aspect of that. But it took them, like 6 attempts by Taysom Hill until they finally tackled him for less than 5 yards. So, they did learn. That was at least a positive there. But yeah, I mean, flipping that over to the offensive line's ability to pass protect. Obviously, the Rams star-studded up front in terms of their pass rushers. Aaron Donald, just absolutely amazing. Leonard Floyd, very good as well. They did lose Von Miller. The depth is not necessarily there like it's been in the past. What do you think about the offensive line's ability to keep Mariota and the passing game on schedule in this one?
Well, I'm just curious how they're gonna what type of protections they're gonna use against Aaron Donald because as good as Chris Lindstrom is, and we know Chris Lindstrom could hold up against the best. It's obviously you don't want to keep him on an island for too long. But it just feels like the Rams are very top heavy. Like besides Donald and maybe Greg Gaines, like no one really made a notable impact in that Bills game because everyone watched that game. It was the first game of the season, and just you look at the Rams defensive line, it's just like unless it was Aaron Donald just wrecking a play or Raheem Morris, because as we know, Raheem Morris, he's very aggressive as a play caller. Unless they're dials and blitzes, like they really couldn't touch Josh Allen. So I'm fairly confident the Falcons offensive line. Now, I just think we have to look at schematically, like how are they going to operate? Because I think one of the biggest stats from last week, shout out to Mike Renner for this one, was Falcons ran they used play action 18 out of the 37 dropbacks. So it's pretty much at 50% rate, which is what you want to see because I think you want to put Mariota in those high percentage situations. And I think to counter Dennis Allen, it was one of the best strategies they could have used. Now, are they going to do it again this week? I think that it's going to be something similar. So I'm just wondering with the offensive line, if they get forced into a pure dropback game, how they're going to hold up because I do think play action, definitely get Mariota on the loose, using those naked bootlegs did help him. But I'm still fairly confident in this offense line. I think just the Rams front, they're very top heavy. You stop Donald, I think you have a good chance of stopping them. Obviously,
Yeah,
total order.
yeah, it is. I mean, they're probably gonna have to at least double Aaron Donald and just try to bootleg Mariota away from where he is and just keep him away from Aaron Donald as much as possible. And having a quarterback like Mariota or Ritter who is gonna neutralize Aaron Donald a little bit. Obviously, you can't hope to stop Aaron Donald. You can only contain him. But that ability to move the pocket, we know Mariota's really good at throwing on the run. He's going to be able to get away from Donald better than Matt Ryan could. That's why whenever we played the Rams with Matt Ryan, it was just like, Jesus, we just got to pray for Matt Ryan's safety because...
Do you remember I want to say the first half of that Rams, of course you remember because there's a playoff game, but Falcons-Rams playoff, I think Donald had like 10 hurries, 4 hits, and a sack. Because I think he was going against Wes Schweitzer and who's the other guard? Because Levitre was out for the year. That Falcons 2017 team.
Was it still Chester?
Or was it... Chester retired.
Yeah.
It was Wes Schweitzer. It wasn't Brandon Fusco was there. I was going to say Garrett Reynolds. Absolutely not.
No. Was it like...
Mike Person, maybe? I think it
don't
had to
think
be
it was
Mike Person.
Person. It was
I
somebody.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was another guard because I know Schweitz had to go to the left side and then someone had to play right guard because Alex Mack was still center. But I just remember that playoff game, like Aaron Donald at one point was getting every sort of drop back. He was in the backfield. Like it was scary. At to a point where Steve Sarkisian's like, all right, we're just gonna just dial up a couple play action, throw a quick couple slants, then get the screen game going, and then the second half Falcons thankfully prevailed. But I just remember those games. It's like, man, like they can't even block him. Like I know Aaron
Yeah.
Donald, he takes over games, but he's literally in the backfield every play. So
Yeah.
hopefully that is the case where Falcons have a very good right guard, and I feel like the coaching staff is say what you want, but the coaching staff, I do think they could structure a game plan where it's just like, okay, we could prevent the best player, I think in the league from just completely wrecking this game.
Yeah, and it certainly helps that your offensive line maybe can stand up to some of that stuff. Not a single player on the Falcons' offensive line finished with a below average grade according to PFF, and we don't necessarily take these grades as gospel here at the Falcoholic, but Jake Matthews had a 67, which is a little bit above average. Elijah Wilkinson, left guard, biggest pain point potentially, 62.6, which is about average. So hey, big improvement from Jalen Mayfield. Drew Dahlman.
Sometimes you just gotta be average.
Yep. Drew Dahlman also about the same, 61.3, just average. Chris Lindstrom, of course, 79.4, elite as he is. And then McGarry, 68.2, the second highest on the team. So we saw good Caleb McGarry. Hopefully he can prove that he's a more consistent player this year, because he could earn himself a long-term deal in Atlanta or elsewhere if he shows that he can actually be a consistent right tackle starter. So, this is his contract year. So
it only takes one season. We saw Sam Baker do it. It didn't end well for Sam Baker, but you literally turned one good year into a big payday. And maybe at the time that it was because he played left tackle. I feel like now in this day and age, right tackles are fairly appreciated. So because we see edge rushers lining up on the left side, at least the star ones.
Oh yeah, no, right tackle, it's getting paid these days. And the Falcons will have money, so they could offer it to McGarry if he proves himself. So
5 years in the making, the Falcons will have money.
Yes, it's been a long road, but next season, guys, we'll have stuff to talk about next season. The free agency will actually be exciting for a change. All right, last piece of the puzzle here: the passing attack versus the Rams secondary. Once sort of a legendary unit, really struggled against the Bills last week. Might just be a sort of flash in the pan of them going up against a really talented offense, but Jalen Ramsey had a really hard time. Troy Hill, their number 2 corner, did not. He had a good game, really good game. And then David Long Jr., their third cornerback, didn't have a great game either. They still have some really good safeties with Taylor Rapp and I think it's Nick Scott is the other one.
Nick Scott was like the unsung hero of that Super Bowl run last year. And I know, look, he got stiff-armed by Josh Allen. Josh Allen's going to put a lot of people on highlight reels. But I think Nick Scott like 2 forced fumbles last week. So to me, he's always been steady, and he's just someone, he like literally was a special teams ace, and now is just a starter. So goes to the Rams for finding a gem like that.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Yeah, and they have to. That's sort of what you have to do when you're going F them picks, right? So you got to be able to find diamonds in the rough, which they have with Nick Scott. But how do you feel about the Falcons' weapons? Kyle Pitts didn't really take off last week. He did get 7 targets along with Drake London, who did take off, also getting 7 targets. They didn't really involve Bryan Edwards, which was surprising to me. But they've still got, Edwards and Olamide Zaccheaus and, Anthony Firkser's back on the roster officially. So how do you see the Falcons attacking the Rams? Hodge was actually their number 3 guy, it seemed like. So, what do you think about the Falcons' ability to possibly take advantage of a Rams cornerback group that maybe is underperforming a little bit, or do you think this is going to be a really tough game through the air?
We've seen Raheem Morris's defenses, and I don't think there's much like a familiarity thing because the Falcons' offense has changed rapidly since Morris was the interim coach. Like besides Lindstrom, McGarry, Matthews, and Zaccheaus, I don't think any Falcons' current starter was on that team in 2020 when Morris was its interim coach. So I don't think there's going to be much of a familiarity factor, but I just think, from what we've seen with Raheem Morris defenses, they like to play a lot more zone than man, and that could be towards benefit. But then again, Rams have some ball hawks and they have some savvy players. So it's going to get to a point where how's Mario going to do as a drop back passer? Because you're going to rely on play action for so long. So
Yeah.
that's where I want to see because I think that they're gonna make it a point of emphasis to get the Pitts more high percentage looks because last week was just not good enough. But maybe using him in London as like in a bunch formation we work because I think it did work. Like you saw a couple of those
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
low concepts, but London was like the benefit factor for that.
Mhm.
Like he's the one that caught the pass as well. Pitts was taking the top off the defense. So I wonder if could those roles reverse because I just think in this type of game you really want to see Pitts 5-6 catches, make a couple of 20-yard plays because look, the Falcons are going to score some points in this one, and who knows if they're going to be able to force those turnovers and put themselves in a good field position. To me, they're going to have to put some 70-yard drives together.
Yeah, yeah, and I think part of Pitts not getting as many targets was the Falcons were up big in the second half.
True.
That seems to be the kiss of death, unfortunately. But they didn't necessarily need to attack deep, and we know that's been Pitt's specialty thus far. I think you have to be able to get him involved underneath and on intermediate stuff too. I mean, he's just too good not to. But the Saints clearly basically made Pitts their focus on defense. I mean, that's what most teams will do. The Falcons, part of the Falcons' whole strategy this offseason was we have to get somebody else in the passing game other than Cordarrelle Patterson to be, if they're going to focus all their attention on Pitts, that we have someone else that's going to beat them. And that someone appears to be Drake London. That's what he was drafted for. And so far, the returns have been good. So it may just be a case of some weeks it'll be Pitts getting it and some weeks it'll be London getting it in terms of the production. But I know people who drafted Pitts in fantasy are probably going to be upset by that prospect. But Pitts, I think eventually will get to that like Julio Jones, Stephon Diggs level where it's like you just get yours every game, no matter who.
You can't scheme him out.
Yeah. But at this point, he's like a second-year tight end. I mean, he's had the best rookie season for a tight end not named Mike Ditka ever last year. So let's have a little bit of patience. Tight ends very rarely even do what he did last year. I think the expectations for Pitts are just so out of whack compared to any other tight end. It's just like people complaining about like, oh, he had 7 targets. What the hell,
I mean, you watch his highlight reel, it's just like they expect him to be the best tight end in the league, just the way he moves after the catch, catch race. Like it's extraordinary. I think maybe try to give him a couple of screens because look, I think the Falcons they're gonna have to work a little bit more short game. I think when you play the Rams, that's just how it is with Aaron Donald. You're gonna have to get the ball up very quickly. So maybe they could devise a few things there, just try to get him in space because that's what's ultimately gonna be. Now I just wonder because Jalen Ramsey has started to cover slot receivers in the past. Like he will move inside. So I do wonder if we'll see a couple of moments where Ramsey goes up against Pitts and boy, what a heavyweight matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a must-see TV right there if we get that matchup. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the Falcons matching up against the Rams offense, which was sort of stuck in neutral against the Bills. Low-scoring game at halftime, 10-10, and the Rams really couldn't get anything going after that either. Matt Stafford had a pretty poor game by his standards. They didn't even target Allen Robinson, much to my anger because I have him in a bunch of fantasy leagues.
I'm with you on that. My team still won, but he's my receiver too. But it was rough.
Yeah, I still have faith. I'm starting him this week still. So, but Cooper Kupp obviously great. They're probably going to be down Van Jefferson again, which is a big loss for them. They do have Tyler Higbee at tight end. The Falcons, though, have what should be a good secondary. It was a good secondary for 3.5, quarters against the Saints, and then it all fell apart. Do you think the Falcons have a chance with their secondary matching up against the Rams' weapons to slow down this passing attack like the Bills did?
I just wonder if they're really going to replicate what the Bills did, because from what I gather from watching the game and then just reading Jordan Roderick's piece after the game, she's one of the best, I think, beat writers out there. Talk about how Matthew Stafford really struggled against cover 2, and like Allen Robinson couldn't get open. Like the Rams, the Bills, they played like just different zone looks like 90% of the time. So I wonder. I know people were frustrated with the second half coverages. They played heavy zone, but I just think that might be the most beneficial way because you just can't stop Cooper Kupp. Like it's just the way they utilize him, from preset motion to bunch formations. Like Sean McVay is so good at getting Cooper Kupp matched up against a linebacker or safety. Like, you would think, oh, maybe shadow with AJ Terrell. I know AJ Terrell has shadowed receivers in the past, but I think it's just so hard to do that with Cooper Kupp. So I think the Falcons just have to play zone and try to prevent explosive plays. There's times where they got to allow completion underneath, so be it. But The last thing you don't want to see Cooper Kupp or Allen Robinson, getting behind the secondary, because I think that's certainly possible. So I think if the secondary is going to be successful, they have to play a lot of zone.
Yeah, and we know Dean Pease typically tends to prefer more zone to man. Not like last week they did play a fair amount of man early, transitioned to more zone late. Despite what I tweeted, they did not ever actually play prevent defense, guys. They never actually got into that alignment. They did, despite what Dean Pease said today, they definitely played soft zone in the fourth quarter. I don't know, maybe that's not how he has it written down on the play sheet, but
Nothing like a Dean Pease Thursday press conference.
Yeah, but all that notwithstanding, I think the Falcons are going to play a lot of zone. Casey Hayward is one of the best zone corners in the NFL. It makes sense that they would do that. We know AJ Terrell's really good at it as well. But the issue is at the slot corner position, which now we're talking about. We saw D. Alford play it for the most snaps of any player. Mike Ford was behind him. And then we did see just a little bit of Darren Hall late. I thought D. Alford was the best option there. I thought he actually looked good. He had an almost sack of Jameis Winston very late in the game, which could have actually really changed things. He almost got to him. Winston was able to get the ball off with Alford sort of running into him, and that ended up being a huge completion that basically ended the game for the Saints. But his ability to blitz successfully is going to help him get on the field, and I think his coverage was pretty good too. But are you still? I think last week you were on the D. Alford train as well. I just haven't seen enough of Mike Ford. He wasn't an active liability last week, but I just don't think he offers you the ball hawking and blitzing ability that Alford does.
He just doesn't look smooth either. I think he might just be better as an outside corner than inside. I just need you need the fluidity. It's just not there. He always looks a bit sluggish, and just the Rams have those shifty receivers. Most notably Cooper Kupp. So I could see that being a problem if he's matched up against them. I just think D. Alford's outperforming, but I do want to see more Darren Hall just because I do think we saw enough flashes last year at the end of the season where it's just okay, he deserves another chance, to at least to prove himself. Yeah. But you mentioned those blitzes though, man. I thought Richie Grant had a couple of moments. Oh yeah. It's okay, you want to put him up the A gap, he's getting after it. So I do wonder, because as we know with Stafford, not always the most. He will take risks, and he put the ball in harm's way, but he's not always great at reacting to pressure. I do want to see them crank up those double A gap looks, because I just feel like that first half they really rattled Winston, and it's unfortunate they didn't maintain it. But I think they have to use that as kind of a platform and try to go forward with it, because I just think Richie Grant, he covers space rather quickly.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, that was something that was very impressive in week one, and that's a good transition into the Falcons pass rush versus the Rams offensive line, which we know probably going to be down at least their starting center, maybe even Joe Noteboom. And I guess that raises the question of if they're that behind on the offensive line, do you need to blitz? Should you keep more guys back in coverage? I think you should ratchet it up. Maybe you don't have to double A-gap blitz or send, 6, 7 guys, but maybe send 5 every play, or send, 5 and 6 sometimes or whatever. Because I think you just got to get Stafford off his spot and don't let him get into a rhythm, because Stafford is one of those passers that he gets into a rhythm, he's lethal. But if you can keep him from getting there, he's mistake prone sometimes.
Yeah. And in a game where you're big underdog, it's you got to capitalize those opportunities. So you look at Stafford, a couple of those interceptions were he was way off the mark. And I just think you have to disrupt them. If whether it's through a nickel blitz or up the middle, because the Falcons are gonna. I thought Mekhi Walker was another player who kind of stood out last week. Once again, just understanding where to go with the gap and just hit that open lane, just bam, hit, get right into the quarterback's face. You need that. And just the Rams offensive line, they look really discombobulated. Even though the Bills didn't blitz a lot, they ran a lot of twists up front. And I just think if the Falcons could, get a little creative there, whether it's with Lorenzo Carter or Gundeji or, of course, Grady Jarrett. Man, how good was Grady Jarrett? Oh my God!
Ooh,
look, I know. Look, last year I just thought it was. I didn't say he had a bad year last year. By his standards, I thought he was a little quiet last year. Grady Jarrett looked back in 2017, 2020. To me, that was the peak Grady Jarrett years. 2018, 2019, very good as well. But man, there was one moment where he literally took both guards and just get out of my way and got that sack. Grady Jarrett, I think maybe playing across the field from Aaron Donald, maybe it was a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder. But man, get him going. Like make him like the focal point when it comes to creating these twists because he's going to occupy double teams.
Yeah. Grady Jarrett already has surpassed his sack total from last year. He had 1 sack last year. He had 1.5 against the Saints. He had 3 tackles for loss last year. Obviously, very low for him. He's already got 1. And he had 12 QB hits last year, and he's already got 2. So in 1 week, he's had 5 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 3 pressures. Elite game from Grady Jarrett. Nice. I believe he finished as like an 89.8 PFF grade, 6th of all defensive tackles, better than Aaron Donald, notably. Not that I'm saying he is better than Aaron Donald, but in week 1 perhaps. So obviously Jarrett's going to be a huge part of the Falcons' game plan. The Rams are going to game plan to stop him. So it's really going to come down to the other guys. And I think we actually saw some pretty good things from Taquan Graham, who was the big wild card. We talked about it last week. Like, we don't know if them starting Taquan Graham is like, this guy was a rotational guy. Is he going to be able to do this? Or is he going to be a pleasant surprise? And I think so far, pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I would say so because, we get into it, like the Falcons interior line, we had fears over, and some of those fears did come into fruition. But Taquan Graham took, what he showed in preseason, most notably against the Lions and Jets, and I don't know, like he just brings a different edge. That's the thing. Like I don't know what exactly. Like I'm not sure if he's a 3 tech or 1 tech, but he just seems like a hybrid.
Yeah,
and it works for a team that's rebuilding their D line. He could play that role where whether it's 25 snaps or 35 snaps, he's just someone that his active hands, relentless motor. It's what you want to see. Now it's just a matter of what's around him because it's just there's so much uncertainty. But if Graham could be what Marlon Davidson was supposed to be, you have to be encouraged by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And PFF was pretty brutal to Anthony Rush, giving him only a 35.9, which I disagree with.
Yikes.
I thought Rush was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't really see anything glaring about what he did. So
now, the other players
puzzling.
on their head,
yeah. Well, yeah, I got a lot more, issues with that. They gave him a 49.5 run defense grade and a 52.1 pass rush grade, but a 35 overall grade. This is why I have issues with PFF.
Am I missing like a penalty or two? Did he have like a penalty or two that we're missing?
I don't think he had.
Because usually penalties can ding you up.
I'm looking this up.
Yeah, but no, I thought Rush was okay.
Yeah.
I'm just still someone, the majority at this point, that does think the Falcons should get outside help just on the interior because as aggressive as the Rams offense is, we know Sean McVay to be this play calling wizard. He does want to run the ball. And after how abysmal the Rams running game was last week, I think they're going to make it a point of emphasis. So not only, I do think Allen Robinson will probably get like 6 to 8 targets, but I do think whether it's Henderson or Akers, they're going to want to at least establish some sort of run game. So the Falcons definitely will be tested. This isn't a game where it's just like, okay, the Rams are going to throw. Don't get it twisted. Like Sean McVay definitely wants to run the ball.
Yeah. I guess they're saying he did have 1 penalty. Maybe I think that was that defensive hold that they called on him, which is obviously very unusual to see that actually called.
Yeah.
Because his actual run defense grade was, 49.5, which isn't great, but his pass rush was like 52.1, also not great. But
they
his
are
tackling,
critical. Their grading does go after penalties.
Yeah. His tackling grade was good, like a 70. I was like, I thought he had a couple good tackles, but I'm not that concerned about Rush. I think he played fine. I think the grade's a little harsh, but that's a good pivot also into the Falcons' ability to stop the run versus the Rams. This is a team that traditionally has tried to get a lot done on the ground. They were not successful at all doing so against the Bills. The Falcons gave up a lot of yardage to Taysom Hill. They were pretty good at stopping the actual Saints running backs, and we know Matt Stafford is not a runner whatsoever. How do you feel about the Falcons? The linebackers played great last week. You mentioned Michael Walker. I thought Rashaan Evans did really well too. How do you feel about them stopping Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, anybody else the Rams try to trot out there?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's just a matter of what the Rams are going to, because I just think they're going to mix it up when it comes to maybe they'll use more jet sweeps or maybe run more tosses. Like I just think last week they got so overwhelmed. I'm just expecting Sean McVay to make some adjustments and maybe get a little more creative, and that's where we got to see how disciplined this Falcons defense is because I thought they held their own for the most part. The linebacker was a big question mark. Like I really did not know what to expect, and I think that was one of the bigger highlights last week. Just to see, they were pretty composed, and they missed too many tackles, which is a big thing. And now it's just like, I don't know. I'm just expecting a Rams response because we've seen it so many times. But boy, that running game looked hopeless last week. And there's a lot of talk about Cam Akers, not running with urgency. But it's so hard to judge a running back when he literally touches the ball and there's already two defenders in the backfield. Like that's how I saw with Cam Akers last week. I didn't really get why Sean McVay was going after him. But I think, like I said, cautiously optimistic. I want to ask you though, because he popped up a couple of times. What'd you make of Lorenzo Carr's performance? Like, he seems like someone that's going to be playing a lot of snaps.
I like Lorenzo Carter a lot. I mean, I was pretty upset. I did a whole film breakdown that I know you were listening to. And on the first play of, when they swapped out their whole reserve line, I feel like that was the perfect time to leave Lorenzo Carter in because they immediately asked Quentin Bell to go drop in coverage and cover a tight end. And it's like, why is Lorenzo Carter here if you're not going to freaking use him in coverage? Like that's his best.
He's a legit athlete.
Like he's like actually a good player in coverage for an edge rusher, which is very unusual. And he's actually legitimately good there. And then you just take him off the field. But I think Carter needs to be continued to be used in a versatile way. I mean, I think he should probably play the most snaps of any edge rusher. I think he'll probably play more off-ball looks or responsibilities than the other edge rushers just because of his skill set and athleticism. But I mean, I think he will be a vital part of how they sort of match up against some of these different players, different skill sets. But yeah, his ability to drop back really well is going to be valuable. I thought he also had a good game as a pass rusher, solid game as a run defender. So, I like him.
Do you think Malone's going to be active, or is it just Quentin Bell played him in preseason and Quentin Bell's going to get opportunities?
I really didn't have much of an issue with Quentin Bell in this game, so I'm guessing that it's just like a numbers thing. I know they will want Malone to get out there as soon as he's ready. I mean, I think Malone probably offers you more as a pass rusher, but it might just be that Bell is one of their special teams guys right now, and until Malone gets that comfort level on teams, they're probably going to keep rolling with Quentin Bell. But I would like to see Malone. I mean, I think we all would sort of like to see that because he's the rookie high draft pick. So yeah,
watch his tape, you get excited.
Yeah. Well, Ebiketie had a great game too. With his starting off with a sack. That's good. Obviously, good sign for his season. It's been a long time since the Falcons, have gotten immediate production out of any of their pass rushers that they've drafted. So, encouraging to start.
Yeah. I just think the Rams offensive line going back to matchup is just, there's so much instability there. And I just feel like they're moving pieces around. And after, like, of course you watch the film and, I assume they're going to have to address some of the, things that didn't necessarily go to playing against Buffalo, but just like the talent was just not there. So that's why it's like, oh man, the Falcons, say what you want about their talent, but just they just seem way more unified compared to the Rams line. So it's like, all right, you got to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what personnel groupings are we more of and who's going to get the most snaps. I think that's what I'm most curious about because that Saints game, it didn't go the way we thought it was going to be. So it's just like I think as we see in the coming weeks, what's the pace of the game going to be like, and what players, like whether they're going to run nickel 60-70% of the time, because the Rams like to run a lot of 3-yard receivers. So that's what I'm wondering, like, are we going to see a little bit more base or we're most likely going to see more nickel?
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. The Rams do have a good tight end in Tyler Higbee, but haven't really thrown to the tight end a ton. Is this
he could always pop up Higbee, like he's just he's always on the field. He's a very dependable blocker, but he's just someone, I think he could pop up with like an 8-target game.
Yeah, he can. Do they only have 2 tight ends on the roster? Am I reading this right?
They do, yeah.
Jeez.
It's funny, like Sean McVay has like 7 wide receivers, including former Falcon Brandon Powell, while the Broncos activated 4 tight ends against Seattle. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So
including
Oh yeah, it's true. And including Eric Saulber, who I know everyone fondly remembers.
2 Falcons legends in one conversation right there. Brandon Powell and Eric Saulber. So he almost had a great catch in that Monday night game, Eric Saulber. So I agree. I do wonder how they will attack this Rams offense. I think you try to get pressure with 4 to 5 guys. Try to limit sending more than that, because I think the Rams game plan is going to be like, we know our offensive line is bad, so we're going to dump it quick. We're going to try to set up screens. We're going to try to do all this stuff. So you'll be better off against that sort of attack if you let your give your coverage a couple more guys. Don't necessarily go all out, because I don't think you need to send more than 5 to get pressure on this on Matt Stafford. I think if you do, you're going to have problems. Like if you have to send 6 guys to get pressure. I mean, in any situation, Falcons or any other team, like if you have to send 6 guys to get pressure, you're not going to have a lot of success. But I think 4 or 5 guys, we'll see if the Falcons can keep it up this week. But yeah, I mean, moving into the final segment here with the keys to the game, I mean, do you think it's more important for the Falcons to put pressure on Stafford or to shut down that run game?
I definitely would say put pressure on Stafford, just get him uncomfortable, and cause 2 turnovers could just totally turn the tide of the game. So I just think the Falcons, kind of like last week, just try to force a turnover too. Like I know it's easier said than done, but if you really get Stafford rattled, he's someone that will take risks. Like Stafford, just one of those old school gunslingers where it's just like, hey, Cooper Kupp is within the vicinity, I'm going to throw to him. Oh, I'm going to try to get Allen Robinson involved. I didn't get Allen Robinson involved enough last week, so now I'm going to try to throw the knee on. That's where hopefully you could capitalize on it. So I want to see just the continued progress of the Falcons safeties. I feel like, we saw some encouraging signs last week. I thought Richie Grant probably outplayed Jalen Hawkins, but I didn't think Hawkins was necessarily that big of a liability. But I definitely I'm going to try to keep a closer eye on the safety play, just because, I think that is a big question mark going into the season. Hopefully, especially with Hawkins' case, he showed last year he could pounce on a few errant throws. So maybe he'll be the beneficiary of like a bad Stafford decision.
Yeah, I thought the safety play was pretty good. I thought late they had the safeties really back off to an extent that was ridiculous in some cases. And I know that was, the proper positioning for the coverage, but I would just say that I disagree with, that, because it's like they weren't even able to affect these like 20, 30-yard completions. They were so far back. So I also think that that's probably like, I know Pease is going to rotate the safeties constantly, but I think generally in the deep alignment is where you probably want Jalen Hawkins. I think he's got just a little bit more range than Richie Grant. I think Richie Grant's a little bit more physical, so you probably want him closer to the box. But I understand the defense is like the whole point of it is to keep teams guessing with what the safeties are going to do and all that. But just seeing Richie Grant deep like so often, I think that's probably better suited to Jalen Hawkins. But maybe he just needs more reps back there. I don't know. But I do think long term I don't have any concerns. I think that they were pretty much where they were supposed to be. I thought Hawkins had a couple really good coverage plays too that he shut down. But just hoping for a rebound here. I mean, the Falcons huge underdogs this week. Are you expecting a win, Alan? What is your score prediction here?
I can't predict the win just because I think the Rams have too much star power. Like it's just too many players I think could take over a game. But I definitely think this national media in general just saying, "Oh, Rams is a huge prime bounce back spot." I don't know. Like I was thoroughly impressed by how the Falcons played against the Saints. I was really blown away for those, as we say, those 3 quarters, unfortunately. So no, I think it's going to be pretty competitive. Like I could see the offense scoring points. I could see them capitalizing on a turnover or 2. It just comes down to the Rams just having more overall talent. Cooper Kupp, you can't really stop him. I do expect them to find ways to get Allen Robinson the ball, and then defensively. I do think Raheem Morris is one of the best defensive coordinators out there, and I can just see him. Mario does tend to struggle against the blitz, and it comes to a point where you can't hide around play action. And I still have some doubts about Mario. I didn't think he played all that great when it came to just as a thrower against the Saints. So I'm going to go Rams 31-23. I think the Falcons will make this a one-possession game and keep it relatively competitive, but Rams just got too much star power.
Oh, man, you don't even let them cover. You do it the 11 points. I think the line is like plus 10 or something. So
they're vulnerable. That's the thing, though. Like the Rams are kind of beat up, and I do think they're vulnerable. Like, you've definitely heard about this. Like they have a very top-heavy roster, and
they do.
Some of those players come off bad games. And some, for instance, Bobby Wagner, he looked a little older than I thought he was going to look. So I feel like there's opportunities there for the Falcons to capitalize. It's just, Rams are Super Bowl champions for a reason.
Put some respect on the name. You got to put some respect out there. I mean, I'm not gonna predict the Falcons win, but I do think they will play another close game, which I think might end up being the story of the season. Like we talked about last week, the Falcons may just become this year's version of the Lions, where it's like everyone loves them and they're really scrappy and they like are playing all these close games, but they just end up losing more of them than they should, which is like the opposite of last year. and then we'll go into next year being like everyone's favorite team. So
See, I think you rather want that because if you
yeah,
look last year, San Francisco, Dallas, New England, it seemed like when they played playoff teams outside of Tampa Bay, it wouldn't even be a game. Like it'd be over by mid third quarter. The
yeah,
games were, let's call it what it is. It was embarrassing. It wasn't borderline embarrassing. I think they didn't belong in the same field as those teams. Where it was
yeah,
New England, Dallas. So the fact that already, whoever we'll see the Saints. I think they'll make the playoffs, but time will tell. But like if they could be competitive in these games against the Rams and trying to think of other opponents, like say the Bengals in the future, or the Ravens, that's what you want to see. Like, okay, then win total might only be 3 or 4, but hey, they'll get a top 5 pick out of that, and I think it's at least good. You'll see them against a top competition rather than what was last year, being up on bad quarterbacks, and just when it came to playing actual legit teams, it was no contest.
yeah,
Let's see them make it a contest against teams that we know are going to be playing in January.
exactly. Yeah, I guess I'll go 31-27 Rams. I think the Falcons will actually make the Rams sweat a bit in this one, but I'm not bold enough to predict a win. But I guess that would be the Falcons covering because it's like -10 or +10 or whatever. So, so there you go for you betting degenerates. That's my advice. But don't take our advice about betting on the Falcons because we're fans of the team. That's a big no-no. Never bet on teams you're a fan of. So
you got like 40 different podcasts to listen to if you want betting advice, or you got articles to read.
Hashtag DraftKings, shout out to the sponsors.
Absolutely,
they don't sponsor this show, so if you got DraftKings, you want more shout outs, come call me. But but Alan, I really appreciate your time today. Another good game preview, guys. He is Alan Strk at Alan Strk on the Twitters. No underscore. Alan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
I just did a roundtable discussion with Will McFadden. We talked about Cordell Patterson, Kyle Pitts, Raheem Morris. It's weird. I feel like there hasn't been much discussion about Raheem Morris. Now, I get it. The team has totally changed since he's been gone, but Raheem Morris was a team for a while. So I'm a little shocked there hasn't been much attention. Like this is like his return to facing the Falcons, but I guess it is what it is. I love me some Raheem Morris, so maybe that's why I'm curious about it. And so we did that, and then I'll probably have an article up early next week because to let listeners know I will not be around for these next 2 weeks. Like I have a wedding to go to in Dominican Republic, so I will be missing the Falcons Seahawks. I'm gonna be in big catch-up mode when I come back. So I will be gone from the podcast for a few weeks. But come October, we're gonna hit the ground running for real, and I'll be on every week.
Perfect stuff. Well, we gave them a taste, and then they're going to have to wait for the full course. When you get back.
Look, my cousin decided to get married in September, out of my control.
Just
how
as cool
as it might have been, as cool as it might be to like do a podcast on the beach, I'm taking this time to not bring my laptop to an actual vacation.
Very wise. Very good call there by you.
I'm making a conscious decision.
Yeah, that's very smart. Because if you bring it, you're going to be tempted. And I don't want that. You got to enjoy those vacation vibes.
I've been working very hard these last 6 months. So
you've earned it. You've earned it, guys. So thanks to Alan. We'll get him back on here as soon as he's back. But guys, I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can check out all my written stuff at thefalcoholic.com. And our shows are coming at the regular season pace now. So we got today's game preview, which comes out on Fridays. We tape on Thursdays. The post-game show will be Sunday, immediately following the game, which will be probably like 7 o'clock-ish because it's a 4 o'clock game. And then Tuesdays, film review. You guys seem to really like that, so I'm excited to keep doing those. I'll explain. That, I'll be explaining to Alan, off air how to get those clips. I did figure out how to tame Game Pass by basically bypassing Game Pass altogether. But that's an off air discussion. And then we will have our Wednesday shows, Wednesday at 8 p.m. guys. Thank you to everyone watching. If you're on the YouTubes, please like and subscribe. If you're on the podcast feeds, leave a review, 5-star review if you're so inclined. We really appreciate that. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Check out the Patreon if you're interested in getting some exclusive perks, including early access to all podcast episodes in a high-quality ad-free format. Patreon.com/FalcoholicLive. Until next time, guys, for myself and for Alan, have a great weekend. We will see you on Sunday after the conclusion of Falcons-Rams. Until then, guys, have a great day. Talk to you next time.